Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2022 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are presented by Honda and Honda HPD, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT IndyCar Series, SVRA, the Gildersleeve Pub and Eatery and Speedway, and BP Insurance. Should there be a reason that you want to know what's going on with IndyCar, I got a suggestion. You find out all of the PR that's coming out of all the teams. Very simple. Subscribe to Trackside Online. Just go to tracksideonline.com and sign up for it. It's less than $25 a year, I believe. You get all the information, all the teams, everything that's going on. It's great. Did you make a resolution this year that you're going to get your dental work taken care of? Well, if you did, I've got a place for you to go. The Indy Dental Group. Dr. Jack Miller, 500 veteran, and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have a spectacular practice. And I'm going to tell you, you will love the people they have. And if you need extractions, Dr. Jack does that as well. If you need an appointment, give them a call. And I highly recommend 317-846-6125. You know, there's a way to find out why these guys and gals love driving Indy cars, and that's very simple. Go to the IndyRacingExperience.com, find a date that they're running that you can make it, and sign on and make an appointment. Book yourself a ride, and in the promo box, put DK1, you get a 50% discount. That's Indy Racing Experience at IndyRacingExperience.com. Find a date that works, book a ride, DK1 in the promo box, you get a 50% discount. You know, the insurance commissioner says every few years you need to check your insurance against others to make sure you're getting a good price. So if you want to check it and want to make sure, do it. Most of us have done and found we get better prices. Go to VP Insurance. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. Call Mike Pardee. His number is 317-248-0070. Tell him what you're looking for, and you might be surprised like we have. Get a better coverage for less money. That's VP Insurance in Speedway, 317-248-0070. And if you're into SVRA, which is vintage cars, and also the Trans Am, which the series is taking off like crazy. We're getting huge car counts. Go to SVRA.com and look at their schedule, see where they're running and when. And if you get a chance, if you can get there in an hour's drive, I highly recommend go. And a lot of the drivers that you knew as kids, they're back driving again, around on the track. And also, I recommend you subscribe to Speed Tour Magazine. That covers all of their events, what they're doing, who's doing it, and where. So check it out. That's SBRA.com. Look at the schedule. Go to a race when you get a chance, and subscribe to Speed Tour Magazine. Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2022 show. We've been off for a while and for several reasons. One is my honey pie went to Florida to visit the daughter, and she got the virus. Spent 8 days in the hospital. Came home finally and spent 3 days in the hospital here, so it slowed Autosport down considerably. Plus, my computer was in the ER room for about 8 days trying to figure out a problem. But we're back, and I'm really excited to have a guest we have today. He was formerly known as the Mayor of Hinchtown. He started driving a birthday present of a kart at age 9, and he hasn't stopped yet. Please welcome Mr. James Hinchcliffe. James, you know, your resume, as I said, I've got pages of it. You started young and have been a winner all the way through. You've won championships, you've won races, you've won titles. What is it about racing that caught you at a young age?
You know, it's really my dad's fault, Don. I grew up with a British father in a Canadian home. So while my friends were all watching hockey with their dads, I was watching racing with mine. And I fell in love with the sport quite literally as far back as I can remember. My earliest memories of life in general were watching races with dad on Sundays and going to the Indy in Toronto as a kid. So my passion for it, I came by it honestly. I came by it early, and that was years before I ever drove anything. And like you said, I got a go-kart for my 9th birthday, and then just getting out there and being in competition and trying to constantly improve myself and make myself faster and better. It really fueled me, and I really enjoyed it. And the further I went, it seems like the better I did and the more I enjoyed it. So I figured we should probably go all the way to the top then.
All of your racing early on as you made your way up toward the Indy lights, it's all open wheel, was it not?
Yes, yeah, everything was open wheel for me.
You early on, you drove at A1 Grand Prix, you drove for A1 Team Canada, and you did quite well in that series as well.
Yeah, that was a neat series. That was one that, it was unfortunate that it didn't survive, and I don't think it got quite the coverage here in North America that it deserved. But what a fun championship to travel all over the world and get to race, super fast cars against some really talented up and coming drivers and some already established, Formula One guys and IndyCar guys. That was a really cool experience.
Got to the Indy Light Series. Did you feel prepared that what you had done starting at the age of 9 and worked your way up, that you were ready for open wheel fast cars?
Yeah, I did. Honestly, I think, I came up in the previous generation of IndyCar and the previous generation of Indy Lights car. And so, well, I think the proof is in the pudding that the current generation of Lights car does train drivers very well for the current generation of IndyCar. When you look at the likes of, Colton and Pato and Kirkwood and whatever. For me, I found that the old Indy Lights car was a really good tool, a really good stepping stone to jump into the old IndyCar. And, I got there late by today's standards, but, about on time for the era I came up at 24. But I thought that, being a little bit older, I think was a little bit more mature, had a little bit more experience, and definitely made me feel more prepared to, get into the big cars and do my thing.
The thing that's been interesting to me is a lot of the drivers that have gone from Indy Lights into IndyCar say, believe it or not, the IndyCar is a little easier to drive. It's got more downforce, it's much faster, but it's easier to drive. And I found that kind of interesting coming from quite a number of drivers told me that.
Yeah, it is an interesting topic. I think that's certainly more relevant to the current Lights car and the current IndyCar. We were talking about that with Devlin DeFrancesco has been very vocal about that. He came out of Lights last year, didn't have necessarily a particularly strong light season, not the season he wanted, but he had won in every other level that he raced in over in Europe, here in North America. And when he got into the IndyCar, just immediately suited his style a little bit better. So I think the current Lights car has a really unique style that you need to kind of be very quick in it. And that style does translate to the new IndyCar as well. But at the same time, you can have more than one style in the IndyCar and still find that lap time.
It's very interesting. Your career, you've won races. You had a horrific accident, so you found out early on what sheet time was like, which I'm sure you didn't care for. But you came back the following year and got on the pole for the 500, which I know guys that were here 30 years never got the pole. You have accomplished that, which is very difficult to do, as those who follow the series know. Did you enjoy your time in the IndyCar Series? And I'm not saying did you enjoy it like you'll never do it again. I would hope to see you back in a car, as would thousands of your fans. But are you ready to go back if the occasion presented itself?
Yeah, I mean, I still train physically at the same place with all the drivers, here at Pit Fit in Indy. And if the opportunity comes up, the right opportunity, Don, if I'm honest, I was so lucky. I got 11 years at the top of the sport, and the series that I had set out as a young kid to drive in, and that's nothing to shake a stick at, And I know that my full-time opportunities are behind me. I've sort of stepped back willingly from full-time IndyCar competition, but I've left the door open for some one-offs and the 500 and things like that. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was such an awesome, decade-ish of getting to travel around at what I think is the most competitive and most enjoyable four-wheel racing series on the planet, and made some incredible friends and relationships and things that, will be lifelong. So yeah, it'd be tough to be mad at anything. I certainly had some ups and downs and don't have as many, wins as in the win column as you'd like, and all that. But no, I'm very happy with my time in the sport and in the series, and thrilled that I still get to be a part of it now in this, this new role with NBC.
Well, I know a lot of fans have said to me, if James, because they listen to your interviews and things you've done, and they say, boy, if he ever gets out of town, he's got to go in the booth. Got to go in the booth. If you have the personality to be entertaining to listen to, I thought when I listened to the race from Texas, I thought you were spot on. What you said in qualifying, look where they're running to the white line. If they get down, it'll be quicker, blah, blah. And everything you said worked out. And the race, the same thing. So you have the knowledge of what you need to do to be quick and how to stay out of trouble. And I found it very interesting to listen to.
I appreciate that.
And I thought also the cherry on the cake was when Eric said, when he was interviewed after the race, if it wasn't for you introducing him to IndyCar racing, coming from Formula One and the ins and outs of the sport, he wouldn't be where he is today. And I thought that was quite a compliment.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think especially on the oval side of things, he'd had a long, successful career in road racing, so he didn't need help there. But oval racing was new to him, and he was a great teammate to have, and he was a great he was like a sponge. He was always asking the right questions and learning, and always willing to try whatever you told him. He had a lot of faith and trust in me at that point, and yeah, I guess it's paying off. So it's nice of him to throw that out there.
Have you ever been approached by anybody to be a driver coach to help some young drivers with their career as they move on?
Yeah, I actually some years ago co-founded a company with a few partners that does help young drivers sort of navigate the crazy world of motorsports. And obviously my ability to be too hands-on with that particular company were a little bit hampered when I was driving full time, but I now have a little bit more time. I've been working a little more closely with a couple of drivers, and I always wanted to give back, Don. I was very very lucky in my career to have the opportunities that I had, and I'm very cognizant of that. And my dad and I did it on our own. We didn't have anybody that we knew in racing. We didn't have anyone to ask questions of or bounce ideas off. And we made mistakes as a result of that. And so, a big part of what I want to do is give back to the sport and to the community that treated me so well over the years. And I think a great way to do that is to, help some of the young talent coming up establish themselves and help navigate some of the barriers and the minefield that is professional autosport.
I think I told you this, but I think it was in New Hampshire. I was in a restaurant with a friend of mine, and these two people come walking in, and they had Hinchcliffe T-shirts on, and I was watching them for a while. And they got up and were leaving, and I went up close to them. I said, "You don't happen to know some young man by the name of James Hinchcliffe, do you?" And I kind of figured it was your parents. We stopped and talked to them for quite a while. Very interesting people. And your dad, of course, and they were both gung-ho for what you were doing, what you accomplished, and I found it interesting. I did get to meet your parents and talk to them for a bit. And strangely enough, when I said who I was, they said, "Oh yeah, we've heard you've been on this program, we've seen it." So I said, "Well, I'm sorry about that." But you've always been cooperative. Whenever I approach you, if you've had a time, you've always done it. We're doing things a little differently now because of COVID shut some things down. So we're doing it when it's convenient for you, not on a Tuesday night. You got to go out of your way. So it's working out. How are you enjoying broadcasting?
I'm really enjoying it, Don. It's funny. I had this bizarre opportunity when I was younger, and I was racing in what was then the Atlantic Series, kind of equivalent to Indy Lights, where we would be the opening act for the Champ Car races at the time. And back then there were two different kind of feeds for the Champ Car races. One of them was the domestic feed, which is what you would have watched on ESPN or ABC or whatever. And then one was the international broadcast, which is what was picked up by basically every other country outside of North America. And that's what they would show on their local stations. And the international broadcast was done by a gentleman called Jeremy Shaw, who's still very, very involved in the sport. And he invited me up to the booth one day after the Atlantic race to chat about my race and talk a little bit about the Champ Car race for, 10, 15 minutes. Well, I ended up staying on for the entire show. And at the end of the show, he said, "Hey, what are you doing next week? Do you want to come back up after your race?" And so for the rest of the season, I would finish my race and then I would go hang out with Jeremy in the booth. And that was really what gave me my first, taste of commentary. And I immediately fell in love with it. And I knew that it was something I wanted to pursue, when my driving days were done. But my driving days were just starting at that point. So I did that for 2 years and got some really, really valuable experience, and I think showed some people that there might be a future in this side of the sport for me. And so when the decision was made to kind of step back from full-time IndyCar, it was a quick call to NBC, and that was sort of it.
When I first met you, you were a young, single guy, just having a good time. Now you're a married man. Is your wife a race fan all along, or did she become a race fan being married to you and you're now a driver, or were a driver? Still are a driver.
Yeah, she was not a race fan, that is for sure. Did not know much about it, and she did develop an affinity for it. She would always ask really interesting questions. She learned more and more about the intricacies of the sport, and was almost helping in some cases other drivers, wives and girlfriends, understand what was happening. They'd watch the race together in the buses or whatever. And Becky was sort of the resident pro, I think, because she has this very inquisitive mind, and was always asking questions and learning about it. And now, she is thrilled for me that I'm not doing what I used to do. It's a much less stress on her. So that's been a plus. And, even now she'll watch all the broadcasts, and I'm talking the practice, the qualifying, the races. She watches it all. And will even, text me during the race saying, "Hey, you just said this. Nobody knows what that means. Like, explain this differently, or say it this way." Or, so she's still kind of coaching me. She's this awesome she's in this awesome position of knowing enough about the sport to kind of understand, but also understanding what someone who isn't involved in the industry, what they wouldn't necessarily get. And so she's kind of helping me, be better at explaining to people at home what's happening, and how I explain it and things like that. So it's, she definitely enjoys it.
One thing I have learned over the years, and I've been following the IndyCar, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, since 1963. And you'll find the fans will pick up very quickly if you don't know what you're talking about. Very quickly. And I think one thing that always impressed me over the years when Scott Goodyear was a broadcaster, he would explain almost every race, with understeer, oversteer, what being loose, and he'd explain it. And people would say, "Why do you do it?" Because there might be a new listener who doesn't know. And you'd explain it, what it is, the handling, how to happen. So I think for you doing that is a huge help. And again, I was very interested when you were saying, watch the times, they're too far away from the white line, and a little more track than they need, cost some time. By golly, you obviously were spot on. So I think that will prove very helpful to viewers and new viewers. Explain exactly what's going on and how you go faster.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been something I've enjoyed, Don, is educating people about IndyCar racing. We would go to a lot of events for sponsors specifically, right? Where there'll be people that are there because they work for the company, but not necessarily because they're particularly big race fans. And those were actually the ones I loved talking to more than the ones that were diehard IndyCar fans, because you could explain even some of the most basic fundamentals of the sport, but things that if you know nothing about racing, you're just flipping through it on TV, they aren't, apparent right off the bat. And I loved watching that sort of light bulb come on, and that transformation for them about how they went from not knowing and not really caring to starting to understand and starting to appreciate more. And by the end of the conversation, it's like, man, this sport's pretty cool. I'm going to tune into the next race and watch. And you're like, that's job done. For me, it's about spreading the word of IndyCar and getting people to pay attention to this sport, because I do think we put on a great product, and if you know what you're looking at, it can be massively entertaining.
Absolutely. I'm still interested. It just crossed my mind again. You were born in New York, but lived in Ontario. And though you got into racing, did you ever have an urge to play hockey? I mean, you spent most of your life in Canada, and you didn't play hockey?
I was the only kid I knew that didn't play hockey, because like I said, my dad wasn't a hockey guy. My dad was a racing guy. And so by the time I realized that all the other kids were playing hockey, I was already in love with motorsports, and I didn't care enough. And, I was racing by 9, and I never wanted to play any other sports because I didn't want to take any time away from going go-karting. But more importantly, I didn't want to hurt myself. My biggest fear was always, twisting an ankle or breaking an arm or doing something, playing soccer or hockey or rugby, and not being able to drive my go-kart. So I just sort of isolated myself from other sports and just focused on driving.
You know, I find it very interesting, the crash that you had at the Speedway. I don't know if people realize just how serious it was. You were within a few heartbeats of not being here. But fortunately, the emergency people took care of you, figured it out, and stopped it, and kept you going. And again, I find it interesting, the following year, you're on the pole in the 500. What was that like after the crash you had and getting back to the same track, but passing the same place you had a problem, and you qualified on the pole? What was going through your mind when you were out there? The body? Did you even think about it?
Didn't think about it. Didn't even think about it.
Right?
No, you can't. You know, I think it's funny because, you know, when we pulled up, you know, that May, the year after the accident, it's all anybody was talking about, you know, is how's Hinch going to do? You know, is he going to be the same on this track? Whatever. And, you know, I'd had a pretty good qualifying record there. I'd started on the front row twice already at that point. And, you know, we got there, and I remember saying to my crew guys, I said, I don't care what else happens this month. I just want to leave here giving everybody a different story to tell, you know, because everyone's been talking about this same old story for the last 12 months. And at that point, you know, I'd already been back in a car. I'd already been back racing. I'd already been back on an oval. I'd already actually had another crash on an oval. I had a testing crash in Phoenix. So I'd already crashed on an oval again. So for me, there was no fear. There was no hesitation. There was no reservation, because there was nothing out of the ordinary. It was just another May for me. And I think the way that we were able to come back from that as a group, you know, because it's not just me that kind of suffered through that. We're a family as a team, and they, you know, other guys went through, you know, some emotional distress through everything that happened as well. And it was largely the same group when we went back the next year. And for those guys and girls to have built the car that they did, and, you know, for us to go out there and put it on pole for the 100th running of the race, no less, you know, it was a super cool moment. I mean, pole at Indy is always cool, but a year after what we had been through at that same place, it was definitely extra special.
I gotta say, and this is no secret, arguably one of the most popular drivers in the series is yourself. And for many, many moons, you were known as the Mayor of Hinchtown. Are you still the mayor, or have you left the office now and moved on?
Still the mayor. Still the mayor. I'm the mayor until they vote me out.
Yeah. You know, having watched your career, and I certainly hope it doesn't end. I hope you get some more races under your belt. If nothing else, get a couple of more 500s under your belt. I don't know how you can. Maybe you can do your part from the car. Tell Townsend how things are going out in the track and how the wind is affecting and all that stuff.
We've talked about it.
Really? Well, that's good. I know a lot of your fans would love to see you back in the car, and I'm one of them. And I hope you noticed when you came back, I never came up to you and said, what's it like after last year's wreck? I left it alone because I figured everybody else is that I didn't have to say anything. You've got 1,000 questions anyway. Well, I appreciate your time. I think you're off to a good start in the broadcast booth. I think you and Townsend work well. And it's not quite like Bobby Entz and Sam Posey, where Sam would say something and Bobby said, you're completely wrong, and go in another direction. You guys are pretty much on the same page, but from a different angle, so it's interesting to listen to. And I wish you nothing but the best in your broadcast career, and hope to see you in the car on occasion going forward.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate having me on, bud.
My pleasure. Always a thrill to have you. And unfortunately for you, I know how to get a hold of you somewhere down the line. You might get another call. See how things go.
Sounds good.
Thanks. My guest, James Hinchcliffe, one of the best, the Mayor of Hinchtown. You don't know that name, you don't know racing. And he's now a broadcaster. So if you didn't watch the race in Texas, watch the next one in Long Beach. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again. Another guest upcoming. And so until that time, Don Crusoe. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again.